Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nancy Smoyer. I am a supervising teacher at the Child Care Center at Hort Woods. I have been working with infants and toddlers for about 29 years. And so we wanted to introduce ourselves and let you know who we are, and then we're going to find out who you are.
My name's Michelle Hummel. I'm also an infant toddler supervising teacher at the Child Care Center at Hort Woods. And just to give you a little bit of background, we say infant toddler because we have mixed age grouping at our center. So our classrooms provide care 6 weeks till 3 years of age.
My name is Jill Putnam, and I am the assistant director at the Child Care Center at Hort Woods. Kind of a little bit before. I've done that for the last almost 5 years. Before that, I was a supervising teacher in the infant toddler classroom, so I'm kind of drawing back on some of my experiences, but I also work with teachers, coaching, doing implementation, and just kind of being a part of the PBIS program at our center.
How many of you work directly with infants and toddlers? How about administrators? And I'm assuming since you're here, you're all doing PBIS already? How many of you have been doing PBIS for more than 10 years? 5 years? How many of you are just getting started? All right. When we started working on this session, we were trying to think what people would be most interested in, and we decided that people are really probably interested in materials and finding out what we have found to work in our own classrooms. So that's where we've pretty much focused our day or our session. But we figured we better start with a couple basics, and like somebody else said earlier, if you don't include a picture of the pyramid, you're probably going to get kicked out. So we made sure we had the pyramid in there. But one of the things we found with infants and toddlers, well, let me back up a little bit and tell you a little bit about our center. We have 5 infant toddler classrooms, like Michelle said, they're mixed 0 to 3. And we also have 5 preschool classrooms that are mixed 3 to kindergarten. So when we started with PBIS, we knew that we needed to start with the infant toddler classrooms and help the kids get a strong foundation before they moved upstairs to preschool. And one of the things that we found that was the most beneficial for one of the things we found in PBIS that we liked the most was how everything is interconnected. It involved the families, it involved the community, and the classrooms. So we could work with our families. We pride ourselves on our relationships that we build with our families. And since we have the children for 3 years, a lot of the children for 3 years, we can really develop those relationships and have a strong foundation. A lot of our families get started with us, and then if they have second and third children, it feels really good when they say, we want to come back to you. We want to come back in your classroom. And now our picture of the pyramid. We're going to focus a lot of what we talk about today on the bottom tiers, developing an effective workforce, effective knowledge. Anything you two want to add about the... Not at the moment. Okay. I'm having a hard time reading my... Yeah, I was going to say, my notes are too small. We developed our leadership team first, obviously. We didn't seem to have too much trouble with buy-in. I know that's an essential part of it. We really had a lot of people that were interested in learning about PBIS, learning more about PBIS, and we started out by helping everybody understand that a lot of what we were already doing was what they were going to be doing with PBIS. We have struggled a little bit with family engagement, but I think that's pretty universal for every program. One of the sessions we went to early talked about a lot about family engagement and gave us a lot of good ideas that we've been taking a lot of notes and are going to go back and work on. We spent a lot of time working on program-wide expectations. Didn't seem like it should be that difficult, but when we had 12 people. Everybody seemed to have a different idea. But we did finally come together, and we have 3 program-wide expectations that we use that are be safe, be respectful, be helpful. I always forget one. We have also worked, I'm sure, as a lot of other programs have, with our continuous professional development, in that we always have new people coming in, and we are finding out, not struggling, but we're working to find out what everybody knows and where we need to go with our professional development to get the new people on board, as well as provide training for the long-term old-timers, and keep it all fresh for everybody. Do people want to know, how many people have started the process? Is there something that you're interested in hearing about, going through the where to start? We started out recruiting a leadership team. We have several teachers from each age group. Like I said, we have 10 classrooms, so we probably have about 5 teachers on our leadership team. We also have a parent representative. We have administration. We have a curriculum specialist, and she is also on the leadership team. I talked about our expectations. We have received buy-in from everybody. We also talk to people about this when we hire new staff, so that when they come into the program, they know they are expected to participate in the PBIS program with us. We are constantly, it feels like, working on our behavior matrix, adding to it, thinking of different areas that we need to include in our behavior matrix. One of the things we learned at the session earlier this afternoon was to create a family expectation matrix, and let parents know what we expect from them. And then how to teach these expectations in the classroom is something that we're always working on with our teachers. Each classroom does everything a little bit differently, but we found that works. As long as we all share the same expectations, it doesn't necessarily matter how we teach them. We have informed our parents through our intake process. We are giving them information through our program newsletter, and through our, we do what we call, some of us call them daily reflections. They don't all happen to come out of each classroom daily, but we do send out reflections to the parents about what the children have been working on throughout the day or throughout the week. And there's usually a PBIS component to these reflections that get sent out to families. And what you use as a token or reward system, we have thought about that long and hard with our infant toddler program. Each classroom, we have some paper reinforcements, tokens that we give to the children. The preschool classrooms have a little bit more tangible system, but we will usually write on the back of each one why the child received a paw print. And because we're part of Penn State, we use blue paw prints. And the children have come to recognize what these paw prints mean, so they get all excited when they get a paw print. And we also will give them a blue stamp on their hand that goes with their paw print. But we use this a lot of times to send home with families, so the parents can see why their child got a blue paw print on the back of their hand.
The why part of PBIS, I just wanted to, I'm not going to read this all to you on the next couple screens, but I just wanted to include this. The Department of Health and Human Services and the U.S. Department of Education created a policy around expulsion and suspension for early childhood settings. And pretty much in short, it's saying that there shouldn't be expulsion and suspension, but it talks about guided practices to use. And these guiding principles in the middle of the screen are creating positive climates and focusing on prevention, developing clear, appropriate, consistent expectations and consequences to address disruptive behavior, and ensuring fairness, equity, and continuous improvement. And I just think that this is PBIS. So if you're doing PBIS, or if you're wanting to comply with all these statements, this PBIS is just going along with all of this. I know we do data collection with BIRs. It's good to do a BIR if you're looking for a trend, or maybe there's a certain time of day behaviors are occurring, and you can use the data to kind of pinpoint when and help you figure out the why behind those behaviors sometimes. The session we were in earlier talked about the crossover between Stars and PBIS. If you are doing ITERs for infant toddlers and you're doing PBIS, you can boost your ITER scores greatly. Just the fact of the parent and staff communication. If you're informing parents about health and or safety on a daily basis, a written record of infants' daily feeding, naps, et cetera, those only boost your score higher on the ITERs. So that's just one more reason to be using PBIS in the infant toddler classroom. I looked for some more recent data and was having some trouble finding some, but some of these facts I found were a little alarming. More than 11 million children under the age of 5 were in some type of childcare arrangement every week, and that was back in 2010, so I'm not sure how much numbers would have fluctuated since then. But if you think about that, that's a lot of children that are in a program that need some type of social-emotional guidance, especially in the birth to 3 as they're developing. We need to encourage those skills. We'll talk a little bit more about how we do that in a few minutes. So, and I know that PBIS focuses a lot on relationships. So the last fact I think is very important, just that secure attachment is a fundamental building block for social function. Children need the relationships with sensitive caregivers to self-regulate, get along with others, solve problems, and be productive. And that's the basis for civic and economic prosperity as they get older. So if you think about that, you're instilling these things in these children in birth to 3, but you're also helping them for when they become an adult. And a lot of times I think that infant toddler care is seen more as babysitting. They don't look at it as developing adults. So just something to ponder. I feel this is important to include too. I'm not gonna talk about it a whole lot, but we see behaviors as either language or behavior. That's the tip of the iceberg, whether it be hitting, spitting, no. We hear that a little bit in the toddler room sometimes. But what we don't see is the things that are happening below the surface, and not necessarily at school. At school, obviously, we have our rules and things like that, but what's going on in home, what the beliefs and traditions and attitudes and assumptions are, even at home life, and that staff are bringing to the center as well. We've been doing a lot of anti-bias work, taking those quizzes to see where your biases lie and how to overcome that, or how to spin it a little differently so that you're serving each child appropriately. But for the next chunk of our session here, we just want to go through what we do on a daily basis in our classrooms at the center to give you some ideas. Feel free to raise a hand, ask questions if you have any about items we're going to show or things we're going to talk about. But because we are Penn State, instead of saying be, we use we are statements. So we are safe, we are respectful, and we are helpful. We go over these at rollout at the beginning. We kind of use the school term as our beginning of the year mark. Did you want to talk a little bit about rollout, Jill?
Yeah. So this is something, the rollout is something we've probably done for the last 2-ish years, I would say. We were like, how can we really kick off the season? Or kick off PBIS every year and really make it a focus. Elementary schools do it quite a bit at the beginning of the school year, but being a year-round program, it was something that we were kind of missing. So we started doing rollout, and what we do is we break up our expectations into different weeks, and we travel around to the different infant toddler classrooms. And so we'll each take a topic, we'll do some kind of activity, we will talk about it. There's a little bit of novelty with having a different teacher visiting your classroom rather than your own classroom teachers always giving the expectations. That's probably been one of the biggest takeaways, is that your classroom teacher from next door is coming up. Like, it's just some novel new faces. We start those usually in October. That's when most of our kids have fully enrolled for the fall. And we break that out down to each week, and then at the end we do follow-ups. At that time, we're really hitting the paw prints. Every time a person's coming in for rollout, we're automatically giving everyone a paw print. We're oversaturating it, and we keep doing it and keep doing it. And then as the year goes on, we do kind of pull those back a little bit. But at the beginning, we are really encouraging it. Any opportunity we can to give those paw prints. We have a fire drill. We went outside, we were safe, you come back, the kids are getting paw prints. With toddlers, the paw prints are somewhat powerful because I get to take them home with them on their hands. We have some kids that struggle with washing their hands after that, but we can always reassure them they can have some more paw prints. But it's really hard to get a token system for infants and toddlers that are meaningful. So we've tried many different things. The paw prints seem to be just really important. And now we've gotten parents on board that when they see a paw print, they either engage with the teacher to ask what the paw print was for, or if it's a more verbal child who's a toddler, they engage with the toddler. So it's really kind of brought the families into PBIS also.
Yes.
How do you bring those non-mobile infants into this reward kind of system?
Okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. She said, how do you bring like the non-mobile infants into this whole reward system? So Nancy and I had done a training on campus in March, kind of on the same topic. Let me skip ahead a few slides here. So what we found, we've included this infant expectation matrix with the be safe and be respectful pieces. It's not so much about the infants necessarily as the adults that are taking care of them. But just like on that note, making sure that there's that interaction and developing of relationships. We get a lot of students that come through our classrooms that are doing internships or practicums for their education classes, and sometimes I think they think that we might be a little bit crazy, carrying on conversations with infants, but PBIS is all about those social interactions, and so, greeting the child, not just the parents. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to expect a 3-month-old to smile and wave and say hi necessarily, maybe a smile, but acknowledging them and acknowledging the family when they enter the room, and just, being able to, keep them safe, whether it be in the classroom, on the changing table, obviously would be a place you definitely want to keep them safe during feeding time. And so we wanted to include this example that focus just on the infants, because sometimes it's a little trickier when you're trying to think about PBIS and the infant.
And I always have to give a plug for our mixed age grouping. This is one of the benefits of the mixed age grouping, in that these non-mobile infants are watching our toddlers and they're seeing what they are doing, and it also is helping the toddlers. The babies sometimes will help the toddlers get their paw prints. If there's one of the babies is crying, the toddlers, it's just wonderful to see how the toddlers respond to that, and how helpful they can be with the babies. And then those babies realize that those toddlers are their friends and they're here to help me. And then they're going to then grow up and be that young toddler or older toddler.
One of the other tools, I use this with older infants through the older toddlers. Kids who maybe ELL, we get a handful of ELL learners in our classrooms. So ELLs or nonverbal kids, I've used this many different ways. I have it broken down into pieces here on the table, but this was actually a sign displayed on a shelf in my classroom. We definitely have toys at kid level, but sometimes the young, even the older infants, don't necessarily want to get up and reach for things. But I want to play with, and they can point at whatever picture they want. I also use it as a choice chart sometimes. The pieces I Velcro onto a clipboard, and then they can, this is a personal one for a child that was in Nancy's room. So he had a lot of different picture selections that he could choose from just to help, I want to play with, to be able to make that decision. It would lessen the chance of a meltdown in the classroom. Sometimes the choices are overwhelming during activity time, so just allowing him to choose what he wanted to play with. I've also used the same chart for a behavior child I had that had a meltdown every time we needed to come in off the playground. And it was more of, I don't know what to expect inside, what's coming up inside. So it would be two choices. I would give him two pictures of activities that were going to be open when we came inside. And it just allowed him to communicate with me. When I go in, I want to play trains. And he would carry that picture of the train the whole way inside, wash his hands, and get out the basket of trains. But like I said, even the older infants, they can self-select. I know sometimes we don't give young children, infants and toddlers, enough credit for things they can actually do. I'm sure we all do as educators, but other people don't always do that. So just allowing them to be able to self-select, and that helps build their confidence, and it helps them self-regulate better. One of the things we don't have a picture of, I'm going to kind of put Jill on the spot a little bit, is sign language. We use a lot of signing in the classroom.
Yeah, probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, maybe we decided that everyone has heard of baby sign and how beneficial it can be, but we decided to really take on sign language as a center initiative, and we have been using sign in our classroom in all of our classrooms consistently for over the years, probably 4 or 5 years. We started with teaching the kids the signs for our expectations, and it's just grown from that. We've also used sign language for our daily routines. We have one preschool classroom, which I know is a little different because we're talking about infants and toddlers, but we have one preschool classroom that does their whole cleanup from nap time all in sign. It's whose turn it is to go potty. They finger spell the names. It's like amazing. But those roots are down in the infant toddler classrooms. It's helping children to, when they're frustrated, when they need help. We do mainly the ones we see are more help, stop is number one, all done. And it's just really been beneficial to give those children something they can do to really voice their needs and wants. And we have rewarded that, obviously, with responsive care. But in addition to that, when kids are really getting really good with sign language, we kind of help them be teachers to others. So it's really been a hands-on activity that has really, I think, made a big difference in our pretty much our classroom environment in general.
We've included the families in that by letting them know some of the signs that we use often. If we add a new sign in during the week, if we're trying to teach a sign, we'll let the families know what that sign looks like, what it means, and a lot of them will come in the morning at the end of the day and show us a sign that their child uses often and say, what does this mean? Sometimes you can figure it out, and other times you're way off. But the kids are using it at home.
Sorry for the jumping around in the slideshow here. Obviously, picture schedules. This is just one that my classroom uses for washing hands. We were having an issue, typically not after finger painting, but obviously hands were messy after that. But with kids, not always sure when to wash, before, after meals, after messy activities and things. And it's just, we keep this by every sink, and it allows a few of my kids who tend to get off task, what's your next step? What are you doing next? And they'll even point and follow along through the schedule on just what they need to do to wash their hands. I also have a picture schedule in the room. It's very basic of just our day, but kids can refer to it during the day if they're not sure of what's coming next. Obviously, with infants, they don't follow this exact schedule. They kind of feed on demand and sleep on when they want. But it's interesting because the kids will take other kids to this. I think, as Nancy had touched on, we really love our mixed age grouping because the older toddlers sometimes become the teachers. But, you're not sure where we're going? Go look at the schedule. And there's other forms of this as well. I've made movable ones where you can actually move the pictures around, or one on a ring that a child who's struggling can carry with them. So this isn't just the only form of it. You want to talk about
We have a little girl who, believe it or not, as a toddler, is very worried about where her mom is all day. And she comes in the morning, and as soon as her mom walks out, her first question to me is, "Where's my mom?" Well, she's probably in the hall on her way out the door. But she says, "My mom will be right back." And this is 9 o'clock in the morning. Your mom's not going to be right back, but she will be back. So this is helpful because we can walk through, okay, this is where we are right now. These are the things that need to happen during the day, and then mom will be back down here. And we revisit this often throughout the day. And it does help her remain calm. She knows that her mom comes back every day. Her mom has never left her with us all night. But every day we go through the same thing. But it is helpful to have the same way to answer it, and then everybody also answers her in pretty much the same way as well. We do have what we call turtle time. This is something that was introduced to us a while ago, and each classroom has taken it and modified it. And we still use the turtle in our classroom. We have a turtle puppet. Michelle likes to use a hedgehog in her classroom. So, but it always amazes me how much the children will respond to a puppet and how differently they will respond to a puppet than they will to an adult. Even though they see you holding this puppet in your hand, they will tell this puppet things that they won't say to us. And we usually have a pretty good relationship with each one of our children, but they still will talk. We have named ours Pat, so this is Pat the Turtle. But Pat the Turtle will come out. We usually pull him out for her. We picked Pat, so it wasn't a him or a her. And help us tell some of these stories. If we have a particular behavior that we're trying to work on, we will modify, or we'll pick our story depending on what behavior we might be working on. Or Pat might just come out to tell a story. And a lot of times in our classroom, we will do this before lunch. It's a way to kind of bring everybody together. We can take a few minutes and calm down. This is a particular favorite of our children, and I love this book. And also this one. We've just spent a lot of time as part of PBIS talking about feelings. And this is a great one to use with toddlers. There's not a whole lot of words in it. They love the pictures. And they can practice making a lot of the faces that they see in this, in that book. And Michelle uses hedgehog time a little differently in her classroom.
Mainly because my hand did not fit inside the turtle puppet that I had in my classroom. We modified and went to hedgie time. I have a hedgehog puppet. And hedgie can kind of mimic the same behaviors as turtle. If hedgie is upset, instead of tucking into his shell, hedgie can curl up in a ball. He can do some self-talk. He can do some breathing exercises if he needs to. And I have a lobster puppet in my room as well. I love puppets. So typically Lobster's the bad guy, though. Hedgie and Lobster like to tell stories about behaviors in the classroom, and unfortunately Lobster's usually the fall guy. But I can say that I concur with Nancy on the fact that those kids respond to those puppets. I have to do reflections about Hedgie and Lobster, though, because the older toddlers will go home and tell their parents about how mean Lobster was and that he's not a good friend, and that Hedgie's such a good friend, and they're trying to figure out who Hedgie and Lobster are. So communication with the parents is always important, and it's important from day one in the program. So we give the parents at enrollment time a developmental history, and we ask them to fill that out before we even have an intake meeting with them, so that we can gather some information about their family. Now, these are just a few of those questions that really focus on things that they do at home, things that are important to them. We want to support their values and culture at our center, so we want to so that they feel included. So we really want to find out about that even before their child starts. Things that they may, songs that they sing, rhymes or chants that they use, stories, toys, things that support their home culture that maybe we have at the center, or maybe we don't. And there are other children that could utilize those as well, or just to help their child feel included on day one. And then we also asked about behaviors. Are you currently, how's the general development? Are you currently worried about any behavior or things like that? And then we have a parent involvement section that says, describe your skills and interests and how you can share those with us at our center. That's one thing we've really started to focus more on. As we said, we're trying to encourage more family involvement, but to come into our center or come into our classroom and share. I'll give you a little story about my classroom. We started 2 years ago, I guess, with that. I had a little child whose parents were from India, and they had got really excited about the Holi celebration that happens in the spring, and they wanted to try and include their daughter in this. She was born in the United States, and they hadn't celebrated Holi for 10 years since they had moved to the U.S. And so what we did was we asked a little bit about what Holi was, and the part that we found interesting that the kids really enjoy is they get to throw color on each other. So if you've ever seen a color run, the Holi celebration is very similar to that. And I was like, can we do this safely with toddlers and infants? I mean, we took the infants out to enjoy it as well. So, and we did. We did it at small scale. You could choose to participate or stand and watch, and we didn't really invite the families other than this child's family to come in and share this with us. So the year after that, we decided we wanted to do it again and include all the families. And we had such just for my classroom, so we had such an overwhelming response for that when the child turned 3 and moved to the preschool classroom, we decided to do a joint classroom activity with that preschool room this past year to celebrate Holi. This past spring, actually. We just did it a few weeks ago. We delayed it for weather purposes. But the first year we did that, the mother cried because she told us that was the first time they had celebrated Holi in 10 years. And it just felt really good to be a part of something again. And she felt like we were more of a family to her, to be able to allow her to come into our center and do that with her child's classroom. And ever since then, that's why I felt it was important to kind of carry on that tradition, even though it seemed like it was just for that family. It wasn't, because then we included the other families, and I know that it's kind of become a thing that might turn center-wide, I don't know, but but I feel it's very important to include families in what you do, and in the PBIS part of it. And any time that you can get the families to come into the center, you can do PBIS work with them. So another way we communicate with families is we do a daily report. To save on paper, This is a laminated sheet, and we use a wet erase marker. The top part, though, is for the parent to fill out when they bring their child in the morning. We try to have conversations with every parent, but sometimes have that parent that just kind of sneaks in and out without talking to staff. And no, not everybody fills this out faithfully, but we really encourage them to. And it's typically if they're in a hurry and forget. I'm actually surprised the amount of parents. I would say I have like a 95% participation rate daily on this. But what type of night did your child have? Did they have a morning nap already? When did they last eat? Just basic caregiving things that we need to know to provide better care for their child that day. And then in turn, we fill out the lower sections. Meal times, more for the toddler or infants that are on solid foods, you can fill in there. Feeding schedule for the infant bottles, diapering, nap times, and just other notes. And in there, a lot of times I will write, ask me about my paw print, so that the parents are cued if their kid got a paw print that day. Oh, they got a paw print, can you tell me about that? It really does encourage a lot of parent-child conversation that a 2-year-old, my 8-year-old doesn't like to have those conversations with me. What'd you do at school today? Nothing. So that kind of cues them in at least to be able to have a small conversation about their toddler's day. Yeah. Yeah, so they look at it and then leave it there. We wash it off and use it the next day. I have some parents who maybe, not to pick on dads, but maybe dad picks up and mom really wants to know this information, so he uses his phone, takes a picture of it. It's also something that I've taken a picture of and emailed to a parent before. We have cameras in the classroom, so just taking a picture and uploaded it and emailed it to a separated family. Mom wanted to know how he was doing, wasn't going to be able to see the child that evening, so what she had asked, and I did not repeat, was, did the parents leave this daily card there for us? And yes, and it's very green. We're a green center, so we try not to produce too much waste and just to wipe it off and use it again the next day. Occasionally, we have to replace them when the lamination wears off, but it's just very beneficial for us to get a piece of whatever their night was like or their morning before they get to school, and then the parent can find out about their day. Anything? Obviously, these are references that we use to complete this PowerPoint and some of the handouts that are in your packet. We brought lots of books and picture schedules and things along, but we really wanted to spend some time. I know several of you have asked some questions, but to open it up to any questions or discussions that you wanted to have, even specifics, we'll try and answer what we can as far as what we do in our classroom with PBIS. So, anybody? Sue.
Well, just as you were talking about some of the ways that you communicate with families and all of those pieces just sounded so much like the material they were presenting in their last session of how this is absolutely supports your PBIS work, but guess what? It's the stuff that just supports really good care of children and connecting with families and so forth. So I just think the more that we can build that, this is part of how you move up in STARS, this is how you do PBIS, this is how you support families. Thank you both.
Thank you. And it was interesting as we were building this presentation for the PBIS day we had on campus that Nancy and I did the presentation for, because I was finding all that information that backed it up. Boosting your ITER scores, and that's part of STARS. And, PBIS plays into STARS, it plays into NACE, any of those accreditations or other programs that are out there and available. PBIS, it's just a nice crosswalk between all that. And so, and family involvement is an important piece of STARS, NACI, PBIS. And I think I feel like we have an okay amount of family involvement, but I think it's something that we're always working on, so.
And what's really nice about PBIS as well is it's not something you pull out when you need it. It's something that you do every day. So it becomes a habit. The way you speak with the children is the way we should all be speaking to the children every day, using the positives, reminding them how wonderful they are and what there is, what's special about each one of them and what they can like about themselves and each other, and celebrating their differences. And it's just something that we should be doing with everybody.
Also with infants and toddlers, I think it's important to point out that repetition, 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 repetition. I mean, we literally have read these books over and over again. And sometimes Hedgie will read a book and we'll shut it and they say again, and we do it again. It's built in so frequently that as they get older, they start being part of it. They may be holding the turtle. Our older toddlers sometimes are reading to our younger infants. Having that mixed age grouping is super important. And the infants being right in the middle of all of it is the most important. Now, if they're napping or need a bottle, they are one-on-one with the teacher and taking care of that. But if they are up and awake and being a part of the group, if we're having a turtle time, if we're having PBIS rollout, they're in a teacher's lap being a part of the group. And so it's just part of our everyday living. But repetition, I think, is the most important thing. Kids who are, just kind of passively sitting here, this month, 2 months from now, are more actively participating. So.
Oh, yeah. So what type of reward system like for when the kids get paw prints? So what I've done in my classroom is there's an area right outside my classroom that's kind of like a parent board area. And next to that, then we hang paw prints up on the wall. So they take a paper paw print home, and especially during rollout, we try and display as many paw prints around the building as we can. But even when it's not rollout, I try to display them outside my classroom. And then once we hit a certain number of paw prints, we do some type of celebration. We've done Pajama Day. The toddlers really like to wear their pajamas anyhow. So Pajama Day, or favorite stuffed animal day, dance parties, just things that the infants and toddlers really enjoy. Oh yeah, walks. We reward them with walks sometimes. We on campus are fortunate enough to be able to utilize that facility, and there's a duck pond and things like that. And so those are just some of the simple rewards that we use with them. And usually it's a small number, other than rollout, because we paw print everything. But usually it's a small number. So usually about once a month, once every 6 weeks, we're doing some type of special day or something.
In addition to that, when classrooms are earning paw prints to get their classroom reward, we try to do center-wide rewards, and those don't happen nearly as often because they're just a little bit trickier to coordinate. We also mentioned earlier that we do curriculum reflections, so a lot of times center-wide, when we keep track, and when every classroom is sent out a curriculum reflection that has something to do with PBIS, then we'll do a center-wide reward. Or sometimes if your classroom has earned your reward, we'll do center-wide. Those are a little bit trickier, so we try to figure it out. But we did a paw print cookie situation, which just was a little overwhelming. So we try not to make cookies be our reward, but we did do that one time. But we also invited parents in to do, it's kind of a tradition we do anyways for Summer in the Woods, where we're doing activities, but we really pulled in PBIS with that. One time when the kids, everyone, was earning their rewards, we did a coffee and conversation for parents. So we rewarded parents. And at that point, we really focused on them coming safely into the center, and they earned their coffee and donut. So we try to do it in the classroom the most often because that's where the relationships are. But we do try to stretch it out maybe twice a year center-wide.
Well, those are our email addresses. I should have put our names by them, but obviously the one starting with N is Nancy's, M is Michelle, that would be me, and the J is Jill's. So if you guys think of anything else or need any other information or anything, feel free to email us. And we thank you for joining us.